Right, welcome to the very first lesson. I'll split this lesson into 4 parts. We're going to have a quick look around the whole program, then we're going to look at opening, closing, saving and making a new image. Then we're going to look around the toolbar, and finally we're going to have a quick look at layers. Now I do want to say before I start anything, it doesn't matter if you don't take too much in from this lesson. I know that sounds strange, but if you're like me, it'll be next week when we start the practical lessons and go through things slowly that you'll really start picking up what you're doing. So this week is just a scoot round around the program. Don't worry if you don't pick up too much, but do stop the video every now and then and have a go with the program, come back to the video and keep on doing that. It'll probably work much better for you. Right, now we're going to have a quick scoot around the program. You can already see my copy of Paint.net open here. Now if we flick to perhaps the most important place, that's the top left hand side. Here you'll see the main menu with file, edit, etc. on, and the main menu buttons or icons. I tend to use both words, I'll warn you that now, same as I use images and files. Below that is Tools Options. Now those will change depending on what tool you've got selected. So below that we've got the toolbar, and without worrying what they are, if you just look, watch these tool options, and as I change the tools, not all of them, but as I change the tools, the options change. And if I put it on text, you'll recognize that most of that has to do with text. So the options will change depending on the tool. If you can't find the option you want, maybe you're on the wrong tool. Okay, so that's the main part, the top left hand side. Right, moving straight on, going to the bottom left, and you can see this is the colour window. Now generally you have 2 colours you can use, the primary and the secondary, and a lot of things like paintbrushes etc. The primary will be on your left mouse button and the secondary will be on your right mouse button. Now we can change either of these by doing a left click on them and selecting a colour. We can select it from this colour wheel, or we can select it from this preset palette down here. And if I click on the secondary one, I can do the same thing. There are more options here, but we won't worry about those at the moment because that gets quite complicated. At the moment this is plenty of colours for us. So that's the colour palette. Okay, moving on again, we'll go to the bottom right, and here we have the layers window. I'm not going to go into that now because we'll cover the layers window at the end of this lesson. That'll be the last thing. And the top right, this is the history window. Now I don't actually use that a lot, and you can see 4 buttons up here which correspond to the 4 windows: tools, history, layers and colours. And so if I click there, you'll see the history one disappears, and I'm going to leave it off because I don't use it very often. There are some options there which we may go into at a later stage, but you don't need to know about now, and I don't want to confuse you too much. So that was basically it. That is our first look around Paint.net. Okay, in this second part of the lesson we're going to look at opening, closing, saving an image, and finally making a new image. So opening an image is quite simple. Like most things in Paint.net, you can do it more than one way. If we look back up at the top left hand side again, you can either use this little icon there, which is open, or you can use file and then open. If it's the file you've used recently, it should be on your recent files list. And you'll see I've got some, but at the moment I'm going to use file open, and that will open a window for you. Let's have a look at that. Now the left hand side is your computer, and you can navigate around to find where you've got the image saved. I happen to be in the right place, and I'm going to open an image. It's definitely going to be one of these. It will be this one. Now I can either highlight it and hit open, or I can double click on it. I will just say, if your screen doesn't look like this, if you haven't got the icons, certainly in Windows 7 and 8, you can click this little bar and it'll change. I tend to try and keep mine on large icons like this because I like to see what I'm opening. So when I click on the image, and it hit open, or double click, and there you'll see the image open. Now what you didn't see, as that image opened, up in the top a little thumbnail appeared. There you go, you can see the little thumbnail. Now that's because another good thing about Paint.net is you can have multiple images open at the same time. So I'm going to go through that again. I'll use the icon this time. What should we open this time? That picture of an ambulance. And you'll see now at the top we've actually got three, because we've got our original white sheet, the bride and groom, and the ambulance. And if you look, as I flick through those, you can see the image changes, and that's all obviously be the one we are working on. To close an image is quite simple. If you have a look, you can see a little red cross on each thumbnail. Just click on that and it will close. If you've got any unsaved work there, it will give you a warning. So let's just close those two, and actually we'll close our blank sheet at the same time. So that's opening and closing an image. So let's open one again. We'll go back to the bride and groom, and how to save. Well, let's say I've made a change to this image. What should we do to this image? I'll take the flood fill tool, and I'll take a nice bright colour, and I'll flood fill. That was the wrong colour. Edit, undo, undoes anything you've done. You can do that multiple times. That was the colour I wanted. Yeah, that'll do. So I've made some changes. Now I've got two choices. Back up to the top left again. There's a little disc there, and that will save your image. Or in fact you can hit File and Save. But that's just one choice. If I save, it will save it over the top of my original image. If I don't want that, if I want to keep my original image as it is, say it's a family photo I really like, but I've got another version I've just altered on here, then I would go File, Save As, and you will see a window opens, and it'll give you a chance to save a second copy of it by giving it a different name. I will talk briefly about file endings. This one's a PNG. It's a PNG because the original image was a PNG. Don't worry about what PNG means at the moment. When I'm working in Paint.net, I tend to save all the images in its own file format, which is .pdn, PDN for Paint.net. Now these images can only be opened by Paint.net, so you won't be able to share them with other people, and you won't be able to use them on the web, but it is the best format for saving images for working in Paint.net. Once you finish working on it, you can then save it in a more general format like JPEG or TIFF. I will do a written piece about file formats, so don't worry about it at the moment, but I am suggesting whilst you're working in Paint.net, unless you want to do something special with the file, you can print it from Paint.net, that's not an issue. But unless you want to give it to somebody else or put it on the internet or something like that, I suggest you save it as a PNG, and that's done by selecting the file type. It says Paint.net by .pdn. I think I might have just got that wrong, but it's PDN, Paint.net. Okay, so I'd give this another name. I'll add a 2 on the end because I'm sure I added one with a 1 on the end before, and hit save, and that saves it. And that means I've got another copy of it. This is a new copy, and as I work on this I can just now hit save, because if I use the save icon now, it'll just overwrite on this second copy. In fact, you can tell, I'm going to move this down ever so slightly. You can tell right at the top left it'll give you the name of the file you're working on, and this has got the 2 on the end, so it shows me I'm working on the file with the 2. So that is how you save it. If I'd made a change, let's go back. I'm still on the flood fill tool, so let's use the other colour. So this is my left mouse button. There we go. If I'd made a change and I hadn't saved it, you can see in the thumbnail, you might just be able to see a little yellow star up there. That says you've got unsaved work. So if I were to try and close this down now, I'll hit the red cross on the thumbnail and it'll give me a warning, and I get a chance to save it, not to save it, just discard it, or to cancel the operation. I'm not going to save it because I've already got 2 copies of that. So that's how to open a file, how to close a file, how to save a file. So the last thing we want to look at is making a new image. So back to the top left, and again we can either use this icon here or we can go File, New, which is what we'll do, and immediately a box opens with some options in it. Now this could get confusing, don't worry. As far as resolution is concerned, here we have resolution. I only used 3 resolutions. 72 pixels per inch or dots per inch for images for websites and to go in forums and things like that. 150 for the vast majority of my papers, and just on very special occasions, because it does waste quite a lot of ink, 300 pixels per inch. That's if I'm working on a family photograph or maybe a paper, but one which has got photographic detail in it, a lot of fine detail, then I'll use 300, but generally I use 150. The PDF with this week's lesson does have some links into a couple of articles I've done about resolution. Any questions you can ask in the forum. So I've changed the resolution to 150. Now I'm going to ignore pixels and use print size, because pixels will look after themselves. I'm sure someone's going to shoot me for this, but I can't actually remember what A4 is. I think it's 8.3 and 11.7. If I've got that wrong, I apologise. Don't believe me. I think I've got it right. There is a page on craftbuild.com which will tell you. The information page on paper sizes. But I hope you noticed there the pixels did change because I changed the print size. Now obviously I can make a paper any size I want here. Watch those pixels. If I say I want a 5 by 5 paper, so 5 inches by 5 inches, now the pixels have changed. If you don't like working in inches, you can change it to centimetres, but I'm afraid I still like inches. So I'm going to go back to the A4, and obviously this will be portrait because the width is thinner. Do it the other way around if you want landscape. I'm even more unsure of the size there, but we'll check it. And there we are. Hopefully I've got an A4 sheet there, although it may be the wrong size. So that's a new sheet. I don't make sheets every time. I quite often save templates. So if this is A4, if I now choose to save it, File, Save As, I'll change it to paint.net again, and I'll say, I can see I've already got one there, but I'll give it the name of A4 template and portrait 150, and hit save. Now that'll be saved onto my computer, and anytime I want an A4 sheet I can just open it up again, make sure I save it as something else. So that's a template I can open again and again. Right, so we've covered opening, closing, saving and making a new image. Don't worry if you don't get it, we'll go through it slower when we actually start doing the examples. In this section we're going to look at the tools on the toolbar. So we'll flick straight over to there, and first of all we're going to look at these four. The four going down the left hand side. They're all selection tools, and they help us to select a section in an image to work on. Now I can explain it best by showing you. So I'll open an image and I'll go back to the bride and groom image. Now the top tool is a rectangular selection tool, and we also have an oval one. So oval and rectangular work very much the same. I'll use the rectangular tool. I'll go back to the image and I'll use the tool to select it. Well, actually I haven't done a brilliant job of that because you see it doesn't quite cover the whole image. No need to worry. Going back to the toolbar, on this side these top two tools change that box. Now the second one, which is this one here, just changes the selected area. So if I click on that and go back to the image, you'll see some little grab boxes have appeared, and these just let me change the selected area. So I can change it to make sure I've got the whole image, which is what I want to do at the moment. So now I've got the whole image. There is a rotate as well there, but we won't use that at the moment. I've got the whole image, and its counterpart on the toolbar is the top one. And rather than changing the selection, this changes the image under the selection. So back to the image again, and this time, although the same grab boxes are there, this time they'll actually change the selection. Perhaps not. A little tip here is grab the corner, hold shift on your computer keyboard, and then when you move it, it'll do it proportionate. I can't make those a strange size, they will stay in proportion. And we have two smaller bride and groom. Right, while I'm here I want to mention two other quick things to you. One is this checkered pattern. That means transparent. So the only thing in this image is the bride and groom. It started as a transparent PNG, which you may know I give away on the sites. So this was a transparent image, and this checker means transparent. If we were to put that on a website, you wouldn't see the checker, you would just see the bride and groom. The other thing to mention I will go to the full screen, is Edit Undo. Will undo what you've just done. If you watch the image, I can do that multiple times until the image is back to how it was. So it's like sending time backwards. And I think we're there. So that's the square select, and obviously the round select is very similar. Back to the toolbar, we have the magic wand, which is this fourth one down. I'm just right clicking off there because the image was still selected, and that takes it away. That's right clicking off. Now the magic wand selects a colour. There we go. It selected that purpley colour, or it selected white. You will notice at the top there's a tolerance setting which is very low at the moment. If I make it more tolerant, the sort of more wider colour range it will select. So if I'm going to move this up by clicking in the box, left click, and you watch the picture as I move it up. Remember, I selected white, but as I move it up, more and more colour is selected. I expect that grey colour to go in a second. There it goes, that's now selected as well, and I keep on going up and more colour is selected. And you notice if I do that, then hit delete, I'm well on my way to making a digistamp with whoops, went a bit too far there. Well on my way to making a digistamp with the colour removed. I've taken the tolerance down again. Or maybe I should have kept it up, I don't know. Let me undo that. I'm going to increase the tolerance a little bit so it gets all the red. Hopefully. We can keep on doing that. And I say eventually that has got all the black. I need to take tolerance down on that. Eventually we would get rid of all the colour. I won't keep on doing that, but you get the idea. Right, let me undo what I've done there. So again, we're sending time backwards. Would have actually been quicker to close this down and there we go, back to our original picture again. So that's the magic wand. There is a final force selection tool which I will show you quickly, which is the lasso. Now on that you can just choose an area. I am just going to show you the magnifying glass first because I want to zoom in. So hit the magnifying glass. There we go. And if I left click, it will zoom in. If I right click, it will zoom out. Now that goes together with the hand tool, which once you're zoomed in, the hand tool will let you move your picture around. Now I've zoomed in there. Let me just move that box out of the way. I've zoomed in there because I want to show you the lasso tool, and basically with this you're drawing around the area you want. And someone did mention shading a bit back. So if I select that area and I can go adjustments, brightness and contrast, and you can see I can make that area lighter or darker. I'll just make it a little bit darker. Click off. Oh, it looks a little bit like a bruise, but you get the point that you can darken a certain area and it only affects the area we had selected. There are a few other options to go with the selection tools up here. If I go back to the box again, you can see that's to replace an area, that's to add an area. If I had an area selected, I could add another one. So if I've got that selected, if I select that area, sorry, I didn't have it selected, and I can add another area and add another area. But the replaces what you've got with an area. The subtract, I've got an area selected there. If I select another area, you'll see it subtracts that from it. All very interesting and worth having a play around with. The only other option which you might want to use straight away is with the magic wand. Again, I'll click off there. I need to be on replace to click off. I also need to be off the image. Oops, gone a bit too far there. So let's pick the magic wand and click off. Up here you'll see two modes. Up here, contiguous, which I can never pronounce, or global. Contiguous, if I select the white, we'll just select the white in that area. However, if I now flick it over to global and show you the whole image, it has actually selected all the white in the image, including over on the eyes on this one, etc. So that is the difference between contiguous and global. I'll flick it back to contiguous and then it will just select the one area again. Okay, so that's the selection tools. Again, we will use them more as we do some solid examples. We also have the zoom in tool and the hand, which lets us move around. So that's the first part of the toolbar, and now we're going to move on to the lower part. So you can see I've come back to my original image for this. Right. But skipping over to the toolbar, the first tool we'll look at is the flood fill, which is this tool here, which I have selected. Now the flood fill tool will go with your primary and secondary colours. The primary colour will be in your left mouse button, the secondary colour will be in your right. So if I flick over to our image, if I were to click there with the left button, that's my primary colour. Now remember the tolerance bar with the magic wand, or we have that with the flood fill tool as well. So have a play around with that and you'll notice as you increase the tolerance, so I'll increase the tolerance here, more and more of the image gets selected. Take the tolerance back down again. Also, to the left of that, you'll see that you don't always have to use solid colour. If I put it on 50%, you can see down here in the corner what has happened to that. There are all sorts of weird and wonderful things on here which you can try out. For the moment I will use a solid colour. And also further along you have the same mode you had with the magic wand, the word I can't say, contiguous or global. If I flick it over to global, you'll notice that more of the image is covered. Now if I increase the tolerance, as I increase the tolerance, more and more of it gets covered. We'll take that back down again. So that's the flood fill tool. Great tool to have a play around with. Let me do some undoing here. Get my picture back to some sort of reasonableness. It does work with the selection tools if you need to use them. So if I were to select an area up here, then I should be able to flood fill that area by increasing the tolerance. Obviously it's got stuck. There we go. Take the tolerance back down again. So that's the flood fill tool. You can use it with the selection tools. The paintbrush and the pencil, which is down here, I will skip over fairly quickly. Is paintbrush, you'll see the options up here. The thickness of the paintbrush, hardness of the paintbrush, and likewise it uses the same colours, which are the primary and the secondary. Undo that. And the pencil is basically a finer version. I'm not even sure if you can see that. Okay, that's the paintbrush and the pencil tool done very quickly. A bit more undoing here. The text tool, I know I've skipped one here, but we'll come back to them. The text tool. If you look up in the top left, you'll find the options you would expect to find on any text tool: the font, the size, bold, etc., etc. Don't forget, it will still be taking its colours from the colour palette. So if we were to make a big text here, and I'm going to go back to my blank image and click in primary colour. Obviously I can change that to the secondary colour if I prefer, by switching the two colours around. I can also change the font. That wasn't a very big change, was it? And I can move it and resize it. Notice you can't see what's happening there now I've moved it. Make it bold and italic and even underline it. I won't bother with a strike through, I hardly ever use that. And the alignment tool, so everything you'd expect to find on the text tool. Right, carrying along the bottom we have the shape tool, and up here in options you have the different shapes available. So if we picked one like the cog there, now the brush width in this case will give you the outside line, so I'm going to take that down because that's far too thick. Let's try 20, and in this box you can have just the outside, just the inside, or both. So if we select both and we go over to the image, you can see the shape. I will just take the outside line down a little bit further. There we go, that's slightly better. I can resize it, I can rotate it. I can even change the colours. If I were to go over to the colour palette and choose different colours, they would appear in the object. So you've got a nice selection of objects there to have a play with. We can change the style of the outside line as well if we want, so we'll go to dotted, and the fill once again doesn't have to be solid. I say I'll leave you to have a play with that, for it's quite good fun. Right, moving back up the left hand side, I'm going to miss out this tool. It's a colour replacer. We will deal with that later. The colour picker. Now if you have a colour which you like in an image, and I'm going to change over to my bride and groom image here. Now if I have a colour I like, and I hope you can see I'm on the colour picker, I'm hovering over the bride. If I left click, it'll put it as my primary colour, and if I right click, it'll put it as my secondary colour. And obviously you can then use it with any of the other tools. So if I left click there, that becomes my primary colour. I hope you can see down in the colour window, and I'll right click there. I'll show you the colour window, and you can see those have become my primary and secondary colours. So if I were now to change over and use the flood fill tool, I could go to the male of the species. Whoops, we're not on solid, are we? Let me move the flood fill tool back to solid colour. And I'm just using the left or the right button depending on what I'm trying to do. Oh, got more areas there. I think that's probably got most of it. So you can take colours from one thing and take it to another. It doesn't even have to be in the same picture. I can now make a shape. I can do another gear here, and it'll have that purple shapes. There we go. So that's the colour picker. It lets you pick a colour from any image and use it in any other image, or indeed the same image. I think hopefully the eraser tool or rubber is quite obvious. We pick it here. You'll see an option for the width and hardness. So we'll give it a bit more width. Go over to our image and start rubbing things out. Obviously, because there was nothing there, underneath is now transparent. So that's the rubber. You can make it as large or as thin as you wish. Right, let's clear up this image a little bit. There we are. Because I want to show you the gradient tool once again. The gradient tool uses the primary and secondary colours. You'll see some very interesting options appear at the top here. Transparency, colour, we'll keep it on colour at the moment. No repeat, and obviously repeat if you wish. Swirls and circles. So it's going to take you two primary colours, and what you want to do is just go to your sheet and draw a line. Now we had those two purpley colours selected, but you'll notice if I go down to the colour window and change the colours, they change in the main image as well. And if you can see the two dots, that taking away the purple. That's bringing in the blue. I can move it down, I can move it round. We'll have it going across the paper. Great way to make some very simple but effective backing papers. If you watch as I change the colours, you know I'm not going to get a good colour combination here. Not bad, quite bright. You might not be getting the full effect on the video. It is a nice gradient, but videos being what they are, you may not be getting the full effect. And if we change the options at the top, let's go to the circular one because I quite like that. And we'll put that dot in the middle, and we'll move that one further to the outside. Maybe we've got two more contrasting colours there. Okay, so see, not putting contrasting colours in. Not bad. Move that one all the way out. And again, a nice backing paper for you there. So that's playing with the gradient tool. Now, I will show you the option of repeat, which is this. I'm going to change it from no repeat to repeat, but I'd like you to be looking at the sheet as I do it, and you can see it sort of starts again, and the closer I bring those two dots to each other, the more repeats it does. I don't have to have it like that. This will move both dots at the same time. I actually quite like that. So the gradient tool is one I really suggest you have a play around with. That was the other type of repeat, and this is the other type. Well, this is another type of shape, which is a selection at the top. Yes, another one. So very, very nice. Quite very impressed with my colour choice there. But please, please give the gradient tool a try. You can as I have done, you can stumble over rather nice designs. Again, this will work with the selection tools. So if I were to take that away, this could take a second. We go back through all those changes we made. So I've taken that away. I'm going to use the selection tool. Let's use the circular one because we haven't used that so far. Now I'm going to go to the gradient tool. So that was the circular selection tool and the gradient tool. But I can't find those colours I had. Can't even remember what they were now. That's a shame. Sorry, I'm busy trying to pick two decent colours, as normal. They're not the same ones, but... And you can see it works with the selection tool. Nice way to get a 3D ball effect there. Maybe a lighter blue down there. There we go. Nice 3D wall effect. So you can use any of the selection tools to do that. We could even use the lasso, which I'll just show you as the last thing on the gradient tool. But you can already tell I do... wrong tool, very good. I do really like this tool. This is the lasso tool, so we can draw any rough shape. There we go. Then flick to the gradient tool and it will fill that shape. So that's the gradient tool, and I'm only going to do in depth one more of these tools, and that's covered every one then apart from the colour replacer, and that's the clone stamp. Now I want to spend a couple of minutes on the clone stamp because again it's a really useful tool and I particularly like it. Now to demonstrate this I'm going to use a photograph, and I have given you the same photograph, so if you want to have the same, do exactly the same as I am, it's this bird here, and you can just open it like I have and copy what I'm doing. So obviously the first thing I want to do is go across and select the clone stamp. Now as with most tools, you've got the size there and the hardness. Now looking at it, I think I'll need to take it up from 30. Let's try 100. Oh dear, this is a big image. Let's try 300. That looks fine to me. So let's flick over to the image and I can explain what the clone stamp does. Now what you're going to do is take a bit of the image from one area and move it to another. That sounds complicated, but the area you're copying changes as you move where you're copying it to. Let me show you. To select an area, I hold the Control key on my keyboard and you'll see the little symbol change there, and I left click. Now I can let go of the Control key, it is set. You can see the little circle there, that is where I am copying from. I'm going to try and get rid of this little sign here because I did miss it when I took the photograph, which was silly. So hopefully now I left click there and I move. Manage not to copy the bird's head. And there, miraculously, that sign has now disappeared. It wouldn't take really close scrutiny, but looking at the whole picture, that's not a bad job and very quick. Not only that, you can have a bit of fun with this tool. Now I'm going to flick down to the bottom right hand corner, and don't worry about this too much yet because I'll show you in a second, but I'm going to make another layer. You see I've made layer 2, but I want to work on layer 1 at this second, so I flick back to layer 1 and I go over to the bird, back on the clone tool. Now hold Control again and left click, and that sets where I'm copying from. Now I'm going to go over to my layer palette and go to layer 2. I'll show you why I'm doing that in a second. Back to the bird, so I'm copying from there on that layer. I'm going on to layer 2, probably about here, but it won't matter too much. There we go. Now the reason I kept it on a separate layer is I'm now going to go over to the toolbar and use the square or rectangular select button, and remember this is on layer 2. Now the top one, because I want to alter that image, back to the image, and I'm going to make it bigger, so I shall hold down my shift so it does it proportionately. There we go, and then I'm going to move the whole thing over there. And just go back to my select tool and right click off so it's not there anymore. And I rather like that effect. Obviously you can do that with people's faces, it doesn't have to be a bird. But that was very quickly how you can use the clone tool. I'll just flick back to the background image, show you once more whatever you want to copy from hold down Control and left click, and that sets it. You can see the extra circles appeared there, and then go to somewhere else and you'll be copying that bit of the picture. Have a play with the clone tool. It really is a very, very useful tool. Right, well that wraps it up for the third part of this lesson, and we've just got the final part to go, which is on layers. In this fourth and final part of the lesson, we're going to have a look at layers. Layers are a really important part of Paint.net and make it a very powerful program. So to start with, I have given you an example. I shall open it now. And it's called layers.pdn. Don't worry if you can't see the PDN. Depends how you got your computer set up. And there we are. I've opened the image. Now, looking down on the right hand side, you'll see that this image is made up of 3 layers: the background, layer 2, and layer 3. Background, layer 2, layer 3. Now we can select each of the 3 layers, and we can also choose whether we can see each of the 3 layers. If you have a look at the image whilst I untick those boxes, you see I can make each layer disappear. The fact is, it just means you can't see the layer. Don't get confused. It's still possible to work on a layer even if you can't see it, if it's selected. If the layer is selected, you will be working on it. I have got confused many times in the past. So if you highlight it like this, that means the layer is selected, and whatever you do will affect that layer even if you can't see it. Right, at the bottom here we've got a few other buttons. This one here will add a new layer, and it'll go above the selected layer. So there we are, we've just added layer 4. Equally, this will delete the selected layer, so layer 4's deleted, and we'll get rid of that. This one will duplicate a layer. So as I've got the bear selected, hitting that will duplicate the selected layer. So we now have another layer 3 with another bear on. And this will merge 2 layers, and it will merge this layer with the layer below, always the selected layer and the layer below. So if we were to click that now, those 2 layers are merged into one and can't be separated. Well, actually they can, because I can edit, undo, as I often use. These 2 arrows concern moving the layers around, but I actually prefer to do it by just dragging them. Now top is the front and bottom is the back, and normally at the back you'll have your solid background. If I were to bring the solid background to the top, that puts it at the front. You'll see we can't see anything else apart from the background now. That's because it's solid. If you look at the other images, so we'll just change that back and drag the background back to the bottom, and we'll turn off everything apart from the ambulance, and you'll notice that is transparent apart from the ambulance, so you can see through that to the background. Okay, let me show you another image quickly, as normally we can open more than one image. You'll see this in the PDF you have with this week's lesson, and that just shows you, here we've got the background, I've called it layer 1 here, and layer 2, layer 3, transparent, transparent, solid. So why do we have things in layers? Let me just close that. It's so we can work on each one independently. Now I'm going to make sure I have one of the bears selected. Remember, we've got two now because we duplicated that layer. I'll go back to the main board and I'm going to use the select tool. So top left hand corner, the select tool, and draw a selection around that bear. And now I'm going to use the top right hand tool to alter that image, and you should be able to see the little grab bars are on there. I shall hit shift on my keyboard and drag, because that will keep it in size. There we go. And you see already we have got two copies of the bear. And there we go. We can make him even smaller, or her smaller I should probably say, if you want. Maybe stick them on the roof. So that only altered the bear because the bear is the only thing on that layer. If I were to choose the ambulance layer, there we are. So now we've got just the ambulance selected. Now if I were to do some sort of adjustment, let's have a look at brightness and contrast. Oops, I'll tell you what I do need to do is get off that selection up there. There we go. So we've just got the ambulance layer selected. I'll have a look at brightness and contrast. So that was adjustments, brightness and contrast. And hopefully if we change this, it's just going to affect the ambulance, because that's all that is on that layer. It applies with all tools. Let me just cancel that. I'm just going to select the larger of the bears, and I'll use the rubber or eraser, a reasonable size, and you'll see I can rub out and it's not affecting the ambulance. Just make that a bit bigger so you can see clearer. It's not affecting the ambulance because I'm working on the layer with the big bear. Now once again, it'll become a lot more apparent why we want layers when we get onto the practical examples in future lessons. But for now it's enough for you to know that they do exist. If you want to have a play with them, do please. I say this image has been given to you, so have a play around with it and just get used to the fact that not everything's on the same layer, and it is possible to alter one thing without affecting the others. Right, well that brings us to the end of this lesson. I realise there's been a lot of information in this lesson. Don't worry if you haven't taken it all in. Future lessons are going to be very different. They're all going to be based on practical examples. So don't be put off by today's lesson. We had a lot of information to get over to you. Practical examples will start in the next lesson. Look forward to it. Bye.